So we are back. We are back in business, Baruch Hashem. Back to Unit 4 in the Morenu units. Once again, we'll be dedicating the learning this evening to the Menucha of Sir named Dangor and Sir Moses Montefiore. I'm glad to have you all back. We are going to Unit 4. We mainly dealt with the question of what is Shemitah all about, more broadly, in terms of the Ta'amei Mitzvah, and then Tosefet Shvit, and with that we ended the year of the 6th year. Now we're starting the 7th year. I know it's Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Is Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan already? Feels like Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan already, but what can you do? So first we need to figure out whether Shemitah is D'oraita or D'Rabbanan. That will have many ramifications to our learning later on. And then we'll go into the Melachot. Once we understand the Melachot, we'll figure out what we're supposed to do and not supposed to do with the fruit. And from there, I'll keep you posted. But before we do any of those things, we need to know whether Shemitah is D'oraita or not. Because if we don't know that, many halachic implications will not be accessible to us. So we're going to start from that question. In order to define Shemitah as D'oraita, two things need to be decided. Number one, we need to say that Kedushat Eretz Israel is intact. Let's call it that. Is still around. And that is not quite as obvious as you might think, as we'll see shortly. The other question is, are there any other conditions? First of all, we have to say that Kedushat Eretz Israel makes it D'oraita. And having said that, we also have to decide that there are no other conditions to make Shemitah D'oraita. So let's start from the first part. Always the part that you like to start from. The Gemara in Yevamot, Daf Pebet, this is brought in a few places in Shas. I brought the Gemara in Yevamot as an example. Saval b'yochan tuma b'zman hazeh D'oraita. There's a fundamental question about, this isn't a specific question regarding Truma or Shemitah or any other mitzvah tluya ba'aretz, right? First and foremost, before we say anything, we need to understand do all mitzvot tluya ba'aretz meet that precondition of the Kedushat ha'aretz applying nowadays as well. Amani Rabbanani v'anadam rik Rabbi Yossi detanya b'seder olam asher yirshu avotech birishta Yerusha rishona u'shniya yesh lahen shlishit ein lahen v'amar Rabbi Yochanan matana seder olam Rabbi Yossi. So Seder olam is a series of braitot that was said by who? By Rabbi Yossi, as Rabbi Yochanan said, right? And I said this now. And what it says in Seder, the way Rabbi Yossi learns the Pesukim, Asher Yeshovotecha Virishta. What's going to happen is, first, your forefathers are going to Yulish. Who is that? The first forefathers who were Yulish, the Eretz Israel. That's in the time of Yoshua bin Nun. Virishta a second time, and that's it. And once it happened the second time, which happened when?
The return from Bavel, Shivat Zion.
Exactly, Shivat Zion, the return from Bavel. That's it. That's as many Yerushot are applicable to Eretz Israel. Once you do that, so the first Kedusha began when Am Yisrael took over Eretz Israel, and then the Kedusha left Eretz Israel with Am Yisrael. Once they returned, that's it. They're back, we're done. That's the Limud Rabbi Yossi has. Shlishit Enem, there's no need to create a third Kedusha. That's the way Rabbi Yossi learns it. Chachamim are cholek. So once you have the second galut, what happens? Well, that depends, right? According to Rabbi Yossi, the Kedusha remains. We're in galut, but the Kedusha remains. Once that's according to Rabbi Yossi, Chachamim disagree and say the Kedusha has not returned yet. L'chora. Let's see that in Rashi. Rashi says over here in Gitin Lamed Vav, Bizman she'eta meshemet karka kagon achshav shebatla kedushat haaretz. Rashi says nowadays there was no kedushat haaretz. Nowadays is his days. Has anything changed in Tafshin Chet? Has anything changed in Tafshin Kaf Zayin? Has anything changed once there are enough Jews around here? I don't know. I'm leaving that an aside question. For the moment, let's ask, was Eretz Israel Kadosh 100 years ago? In the last 70 years, things became a lot more complicated. But first let's answer that question, then we could move on. So then you can move on and ask, what about nowadays? But when Rashi says achshav, he's definitely talking about, well, Rashi's talking about, 800 years ago. But still, right? But still, what we know from this is that the second galut really did create, the second destruction really did stop the Kedusha of Eretz Israel. The Rambam disagrees. The Rambam in Trumot, in Perek Aleph Halacha Hey, right? כל שהחזיקו עולי מצרים ונתקדש קדושה ראשונה, כיוון שגלו, ביטלו קדושתן. קדושה ראשונה לפי שהייתה מפני הכיבוש בלבד, קדשה לאישתה ולא קדשה לעתיד לבוא. כיוון שעלו בני הגולה והחזיקו במקצת הארץ, קידשו הקדושה שנייה עומד לעולם, לאישתה ולעתיד לבוא. So there are many questions. What's the difference between the kibush the first time and the hachzaka the second time? Many achronim discuss what is the difference between conquering and holding, right? Well, it's not so clear, but what is clear is that the first kedusha, according to the Rambam, the second kedusha remains, and the first kedusha was canceled. And Rashi disagrees and says the first kedusha has also left. So according to Rashi, before the prerequisite, in order to say that any mitzvot led ba'aretz still apply fully, d'oraita, you have to assume that Kedushat Haaretz is still intact. According to Rashi, that would be a problem. According to the Rambam, it seems that that's not a problem because the Kedusha remains even after Churban. So that's the first point. That's the first word. Socha, you have to pass, right? The first. I'm saying that if we can't get through that, then it's hard to justify saying that Shemitah is Doraita at all. So according to Rashi, we'll have a problem saying Shemitah is Doraita, regardless of anything we learn later on. The Rambam, it sounds from the Rambam that this is not the case, and the second Kedusha does remain. Just one point about the Rambam, I received from several people. Has anyone bought lettuce recently or other greens that say גבול עולי מצרים, גודל בחרמות בגבול עולי מצרים לפי פסיקת הגרש"ז? Okay, that's a shorthand for.
I remember that from last time. There was a geographical discussion of the Rambam's latitudes and things like that. It was very complicated. Rav Dov Lior gave a whole shiur about that. I don't remember exactly. It was 7 years ago.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean. So it's in the Aza area, and possibly also up north in certain places. So what, Bechan? Up north certain places. I don't remember the exact borders, but no. What I found interesting in the music, is that Mechon Torah Haaretz write a whole long, unclear description. People who aren't learning the sugi have no idea what you said when you said. Right, this whole long sentence saying in greenhouses that were taken by Olei Mitzrayim and according to the Garshans. What? What now? So based on what the Rambam wrote here, Kol Shechzik Olei Mitzrayim, right? Yes, exactly. תוצאת גידול מפוקח בגבולות עולי מצרים על פי פסיקת הגרש"ז והרבנות הראשית. Yes, right. That's a very long sentence for something presumably very simple, right? Which is Kedushat Shvit for whatever reason, right?
Yeah, but it's funny. But the first word it says, Shemitah Yisraelit.
Right.
And I was totally confused, and so I understand the second half.